We just transferred some of our first demos, and we're set to get into that really soon. So hopefully by Christmas we'll have those out. It'll be sort of the pre-first album period. There's about 30 to 40 songs there, so a lot of stuff.
Welcome to episode 12 of the Hipsters United podcast. My name is Chris, and this week I'm here by myself for an abbreviated Independence Day edition of the show. When we first started the podcast, Jason mentioned in one of our early episodes that he envisioned the show as my way of blogging, so I'm going to kind of go with that format this week in the absence of any guests. Rather than go through all the news and do an in-depth discussion like we normally do, I'm just going to talk about a couple things that have been on my mind this week. I'd like feedback on this week's format, not whether you think I should ditch the panelists full-time, because I don't think anyone wants to hear me talk to myself for half an hour every week, but rather if this is interesting enough to you as filler during the weeks when the usual crew is not available. You can leave comments on the blog post for this episode at hipstersunited.com or fill out the contact form at hipstersunited.com/blog/contact. But speaking of feedback, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the reaction of fans to this week's round of articles from the fan writing staff at smashingpumpkins.com. This week we got 5 articles, one reviewing Billy's appearance during Cheap Trick's Sgt. Pepper's Revisited concert, one by our own Jill contrasting the public's reaction to Radiohead's In Rainbows with the Pumpkins' release of Machina 2, one analyzing a lyrical stanza of Doomsday Clock, one discussing the Adore charity tour, and one on Billy's poetry book Blinking with Fists. It was a wide array of topics, as was presumably the goal when recruiting such a disparate group of fans, as I mentioned last week. So there were bound to be some articles you liked, and some you didn't, for whatever reason. From reading some of the message boards and the comments on Hipsters United about the articles, I get the impression that most people aren't happy with the way this experiment's going so far, which is fine, but I'd encourage everyone out there that if you're truly interested in seeing it get better, to email one of the writers. Whether you like the articles or not, the writers are taking time to make a constructive contribution to the community. As Billy has pointed out, the Pumpkins fan base is not a unified hive mind, and even if there is an article about a topic you're not interested in, chances are there is a group of fans who are. I believe almost all of the writers in their bio sketches last week called for suggestions, so if there's something you'd rather read about, then by all means suggest it. I enjoyed reading most of them, but I didn't much care for the Doomsday Clock Kafka lyrical analysis. As a fan, I'm more interested in the band's history, the behind-the-scenes business of the band, and enjoying the songs for what they mean to me rather than analyzing lyrics for greater meaning. But everybody's looking for something different, and criticism is fine and necessary, I would say, but only constructive criticism actually provokes change. But moving on, some news came out today on gaming website Kotaku.com that a Smashing Pumpkins classic may be appearing in Rock Band 2, which is scheduled to come out this fall, and this shouldn't come as much of a surprise since the Pumpkins have been on all recent rhythm game releases that have involved a guitar, but according to 2 separate rumored track lists, the song today will be appearing. And Wired magazine recently made a comment that they felt that Geek USA should be included, but unless it's released later as downloadable content, it doesn't look like that song will appear. And I don't know, I find it kind of amusing that Billy will undoubtedly come under fire for selling out when Gish is re-released, but nobody says a word when any of the bands re-release their popular songs by including them in video games. Well, this week on SmashingPumpkins.com, we got word that the band is preparing for a short club tour in the United States in August. And this comes as a bit of a surprise to me, since I would have assumed something like a 20th anniversary tour would be elaborate enough that it would require some sort of prep time. But I'm not complaining if I'm able to see the band for the first time since the Reformation. And according to the site, they will be playing smaller venues and trying to hit cities that they missed last fall. Tickets will be in short supply, and now you can cue the debate on whether playing in small clubs is a nod to fans who get to see the band in a more intimate setting, or a tacit admission that they can no longer attract crowds big enough to fill the Enormo domes. Either way, all the better for the fans as long as we can secure tickets. And finally, Jason posted to hipstersunited.com earlier this weekend that Billy was planning on transferring 30 to 40 early demos as part of a Christmas release, presumably the pre-Gish Gish box set that was announced last week. I know a big question in my mind has been, is there anything left from this era that we don't have in some form already? So I did a little bit of counting. There's 25 unique songs on the real-time studio demos from 1989 that are in wide circulation, counting Daughter, Rhinoceros, and Honey Spider only once, as those songs appear in multiple versions on the recording, and only counting non-abandoned songs, so there's a version of She on there that they start but can't make their way all the way through because Billy struggles playing it for whatever reason. And there's 10 additional demos from 1991 or earlier on Mashed Potatoes, at least based on the dates that were included on the original Mashed Potatoes liner notes, not counting any live songs. Then additionally you have I Fall and the songs from Nothing Ever Changes, which I'm doubtful would be included since they're from an era before the Pumpkins really became the Pumpkins. I just can't see Billy including songs where Ron Rosing is the drummer on his pre-Gish box set. So just counting Real Time and Mashed Potatoes, that's 35 songs right there, which leads me to believe that all signs point to most of the unreleased songs in the box set being ones that are already available to those with the wherewithal and the patience to look for them. And if so, this shouldn't trivialize the release, as there are plenty of Pumpkins fans who don't have the desire to sift through Direct Connect or BitTorrent trying to find these songs, but it may be worth tempering our expectations a little bit. Personally, I'll most likely pick it up even if there is just those 35 songs, along with some reminiscing from the band about the music and the period in the band's history. But here's hoping the vault still has something that we jaded collectors haven't already scavenged from friends of the band. Well, Andrew isn't here to tell us what happened this week in Pumpkins history, so I'll have to fill in. 10 years ago, on July 7th, the Pumpkins were planning on performing a free concert at Grant Park in Chicago to celebrate their 10th anniversary, but their request was denied by the mayor's office due to safety concerns. Instead, the band ended up performing in Tinley Park with Cheap Trick as the opening act and as guests during the encore. Just one of many times during the Adore era when Billy's best laid plans did not end up coming to fruition. Well, thanks for tuning into this abbreviated podcast. Next week, we'll be bringing back our concert review segment and reviewing the performance from July 21st, 1991 in New Haven, Connecticut. Check out the show notes for this podcast for a link to this recording on the Live Music Archive. Our song of the week tonight is Starz from June 6, 2007. Good night, everybody. The Hipsters United podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Smashing Pumpkins or Warner Brothers Reprise Music. All opinions offered by panelists or guests of the Hipsters United podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of the Smashing Pumpkins. All audio used during the show is licensed for non-profit use per the terms and conditions on the Live Music Archive at archive.org. Intro music is from the Machina 2 album released for free download on the internet by the Smashing Pumpkins in August of 2000.